Danielle DiMartino Booth, CEO and Chief Strategist at Quill Intelligence, and she joins us now from Dallas, Texas, to talk about the economic backdrop and the monetary and fiscal response, especially. Danielle, thank you very much indeed for your time. America stands fractured right now. Has this pandemic laid bare just how stark income inequality, racial inequality is right now, etc., and what can be done from an economic policy point of view to close that gap?
Well, these are very thorny issues. If you look at public schools in America, we've seen almost 500,000 layoffs. If you look at universities, you can add on another 200,000. If you look at private schools, you can add on another 500,000. My point is that we're kind of going in the wrong direction with layoffs when you consider that the source of income inequality is the great disparity throughout America in terms of educational attainment. And I think that because of not just the COVID-19 crisis, but the protests that have followed, I think that right now politicians are being given a very loud wake-up call to say that it is time to push through educational reforms such that we can truly all attain the American dream, as opposed to having this massive, unprecedented, including the late 1920s, gap between the haves and the have-nots in America.
Let me pick up on the unemployment dimension to all of this. When we get the payrolls later on this Friday, Danielle, is it going to reconfirm unemployment in the high teens? And is the outlook going to call for possibly 20% plus unemployment? And is that going to be part of the economic landscape for the foreseeable future?
So I think that people need to realize that reopening does not equate with regeneration and the full recovery of jobs in America. It's just not going to happen that way. You can identify right now 6 million potential new layoffs attached to the demand destruction that is following that first initial wave that was directly related to COVID-19, whether it be restaurants, leisure, hospitality, travel, tourism. But there is a second wave of higher paying jobs that we see percolating, growing, this pipeline growing that we're going to be seeing in the next coming months, that suggests that we're going to have years and years before we catch up to where we were beforehand.
Yeah, and Danielle, part of the reason for that is I think, I know you think there's going to be a chunk of the workforce, jobs lost, which will never ever come back. Where are they going to be focused, those jobs?
Well, I think that because of the shutdown in the economy, that if you're a human resources manager in America today, you can be very strategic in which employees that you're going to opt to keep. You see who are the most productive in the most unfriendly work environments, working at home with children, homeschooling and what have you. And the crisis has also accelerated the process of automation. So I think that companies are going to learn to have leaner workforces than they've ever had before, and that all of the reports that we saw that suggested a third of jobs over the next few years would be subject to automation. I think that whole phenomenon is going to be accelerated by what we're seeing. And you're right. I think a lot of the jobs that are going to be lost are not going to be coming back.
Okay, so I mean, to make up the difference, we're already seeing productivity ramping up, which is a good thing. What's going to happen to wages, do you think? Are they going to stay constant, or are these folks who still do have a job, are they going to get paid a little bit more for doing more out of the same hours?
Well, I think that you will have yet another bifurcation open up, if you will. I think that some of the most productive employees are going to be able to identify when the dust settles. I've been kept, and these other people have been let go. I think I'm still doing 3 times my prior workload, and that certainly justifies a higher income. By the same token, you're going to have people on the other end of the income spectrum once we do see the fiscal support end. And right now, they're almost more than 2/3 of Americans collecting unemployment insurance are making more than what they made before. So right now the economy's in a holding pattern of sorts. Consumption's being held up artificially because of all this fiscal support that's pouring in unemployment insurance programs. Once that ends, and it will inevitably end, then you're going to have a lot of people in the workforce who are going to have to settle for lower wages in order to try and get that same income. So I think that it'll look something like a barbell.
Danielle, it's abundantly clear that this is a Main Street recession. Why then is Wall Street so utterly disconnected from the economic reality on the ground?
We entered 2020 with Federal Reserve liquidity at the highest level since 1969. That was the not QE era. And of course, after we crossed over and entered into the COVID crisis, we have seen Fed liquidity ramp up even more, and the Fed basically say moral hazard doesn't matter anymore. We will put a floor underneath investor losses and make investors whole. I'm partially quoting Jay Powell himself right now, and I think that this massive disconnect is investors hoping that the Fed's going to be able to save everybody, but the reality is, if you're Standard & Poor's or Moody's or Fitch, you're running the downgrade machine 24/7, and there will definitely be a wave of defaults, the likes of which we've never seen, that I think investors are unprepared for and is not priced into the stock market right now.
Okay, Daniel, listen. All right, Daniel, we got to go. Great to talk to you. Appreciate the time. You keep safe, and we'll do it again very soon, I hope.